We have a very interesting next session, a conversation between the author of a book and a scholar who has read through the book. We have Sri Aravind Neelakandan. Aravind Neelakandan needs no introduction, but still, I have a job to do, so I have to introduce him. Aravind Neelakandan is currently a contributing editor for Swarajya magazine. He has worked for more than a decade with the Natural Resources Development Project of Vivekananda Kendra. He has authored books on sustainable agricultural technologies and traditional knowledge systems in Tamil. And in 2011, he co-authored the bestseller book, Breaking India. With him in conversation is Sri Jatayu. Jatayu has been writing on a range of topics centered around spiritual, cultural themes and Hindutva since 2005, both in Tamil and English. He is a scholar of Tamil literature. A collection of his Tamil essays has been published as a book, Kalam Thorum Narasingam, an electronics technology professional by profession. He is currently a resident of Bengaluru. Now let's look on to a very interesting conversation between Sri Aravind Neelakandan and Sri Jatayu. May I request the members of the audience to please remain seated and listen to the discussion between two eminent scholars.
So, in this session, we are going to have a discussion on this book, Hindutva, Origin, Evolution and Future by Aravind Neelakandan. It's a fascinating and absorbing read in many ways, the book. It's a multifaceted, multidimensional, scholarly exposition of the phenomenon called Hindutva, as we know it. In my book review that I wrote in Swarajya magazine, I called the book a Hindutva classic. You know, as you see, it's a very comprehensive book, a fat, but a very absorbing and interesting read. So, let me start with the first question, Aravind. So in your preface, you say that till now, Hindutva has been studied as largely as an ideology, a political or social ideology through the Western framework, which you say is incorrect. And in this book, you are providing an alternative framework saying that Hindutva is not an ideology, but it is a process, a civilizational process. So can you explain what you mean by that?
So essentially, Hindutva is a process. It is not an ideology. It has the components of ideology. So the Western way of looking into Hindutva as another political ideology is not entirely incorrect, but it is very strongly deficient. And hence, it becomes distorted and it allows itself to get distorted in negative ways. Okay. So, now coming to the process, what is exactly this process, in which particular plane this process happens? It's civilizational, of course, but as you would have noticed in the book, it is more fundamental. It is a process of consciousness. So, at the core, Hindutva is a process of consciousness. And it is an evolutionary process. And it is a process that, to use the metaphor that Mahatma Gandhi gave, it is a process of oceanic circle, expanding. But at the same time, not in a exclusivist manner, not in a monocultural manner, it expands in an inclusive manner. So it is a process of expansion, it is a process of consciousness. So naturally it also includes the civilizational process in it.
So, yeah, so in line with what you just described, the first chapter of the book is the origins. So very interestingly, most of us think that Hindutva originated with Veer Savarkar's book or a little earlier than that, with Swami Vivekananda, basically as part of modern Indian Renaissance in the late 19th century. But you take it to kind of prehistoric times, where you apply a psychological framework called bicameral mind, and then you apply it to the civilization as such, and specifically to Indian civilization, and then explain how it is very unique and created Hindu civilization as we know it. So so this seems to be a very original idea. I think as far as what I have read, I don't think any author or thinker has viewed the origin of Hindu civilizations in such terms. So can you explain this further? How did you get this idea of, taking it to such a primeval level and starting from there?
So actually, in the book, what I describe is a particular process called the breakdown of the bicameral mind. It was put forth by a psychologist called Julian Jaynes. And when he put it forth, it created a kind of sensation, 1970s. There were only two types of responses to that particular thesis. One is that it was a complete crackpot theory, and another one is that it is a work of genius. Now we have the advantage of insight like 50 years around. And now we know that there are some archaeological correlates that actually reflect this particular process that Julian Jaynes talked about. And there are some very interesting development. Dr. Anant Venkatraman, who has given the endorsement, he had actually worked on this Julian Jaynes thesis. But what is very interesting is that I found in a particular work of Ram Swarup, and that was the work that was published after his death called Yoga, Meditation and Gods. He had charted out, independent of Julian Jaynes, he has charted out a very similar but a more holistic process, sequence, in terms of the evolution of Indian civilization. Then what I did was I compared this with that of Julian Jaynes, and I tried to put it in a particular time frame. And that time frame showed something, that in fact, Julian Jaynes talks about the evolution or emergence of monotheistic religions with the breakdown of the bicameral mind. And this particular time almost coincides with the rising of the Zarathustran religions. And in Venad, which is one of the very ancient texts of the Zarathustran religion or the Persian religion, they talk about their original homeland being the Sapta Hindu, and then it becomes kind of hostile because of Agriman, and so they move out of India. I correlate all this and I say that this particular religion, and I got this from an interesting person, Bhaskar, and I blocked him in the Facebook. Okay. But he gave this very interesting term, monopolistic religions. Wow. So what is a monopolistic religion as against monotheistic religion? We have to understand this very clearly. When it is a monotheist religion, it says that there is one God. That is monotheism. Monopolistic religion says there is one God, but that one God is the true God. Naturally, all other gods become false gods. So a monotheistic religion will say that, okay, I have my God, you have your God, you worship your God, but my people should not worship your God. That is the kind of religion that you have in Judaism. In Judaism, you tell that the God of my tribe is my God. That is the one true God for me. But it never says the other gods are false. Other people should accept this God. Whereas, very interestingly, it is this Zarathustrian religion that tells that there is this God of truth, Ahura Mazda, and there is this God of falsehood, Ahriman. And the entire history is viewed as a fight between these two. You have the seed of the concept of Saturn here. Okay, so this monopolistic religion comes. As against monopolistic religion, in Indian spiritual evolution, you have Yegam Satvipra Bhagavata Vadanti, seeing all the gods, all the godheads as part of this grand consciousness matrix. So there emerges one creator God, a unit. Here emerges this consciousness as the base of all gods, that is unity. And this is the schism between the religion that is in this side of Sindhu River and that side of Sindhu River. So when the term Hindu comes out during the Darius and Cyrus inscriptions, then itself it has geographical as well as spiritual connotations. So that is how I see the whole thing.
Very, very interesting. So, talking of the Sindhu River, so you give a very interesting explanation for the very word Hindu. So, all historians and archaeologists, and in the popular mind, the word Hindu, we all know that it came from Sindhu, and it is the Persians originally who had given the name. But of course, some of the Hindu scholars say that it is also the Prakrit adaptation of the name Sindhu, so it is not totally foreign to the Indian culture. But then, you also give some additional insight. So you connect that word Hindu with the Hindu, which is moon, and the Soma. So thus giving a very deep and profound philosophical explanation for the name, not just geographical one. So can you explain that thing, and why do you think it's a very credible explanation? Is it just like some kind of a word play, or do you think that it's a very credible explanation of the word Hindu?
Because already the term Hindu and Sindhu have been connected. And then I find that the Sindhu is a river whose branch is called Susoma in Nadi Sukta. And the word Hindu is there already in Rig Veda, which has been attested by none other than Airavata Mahadeva. It is from his work I got that. And I remember at that time actually discussing with you, when almost 1 year before writing this book, we had a discussion about this. You will be remembering that, right? And we talked about how the word, then we found in one of the very credible Sanskrit English dictionaries, the word Hindu and Sindhu have been related. And so, all this could not be just coincidences. The word Sindhu and Susoma, Soma getting related, Soma having the name Hindu, and Soma is related to both moon, and Hindu is also related to both moon. And then you have Huan Song coming, let us say 1300 years ago, and he visits entire India, including Kanchi, South India, and then he says this nation, this entire province is called Hindu because during spiritual darkness for the entire world, this nation gives the sadhus, the sannyasins, the siddha purushas, the yogis, and the bodhisattvas, and hence this nation is moon of the spiritual light to the entire world. And hence it is called Hindu, he gives this term. So there is a continuity. And there is also a spiritual meaning to this. As I said earlier, when the word Hindu arises, there is a geographical connotation as well as a spiritual connotation. In the same way, when we see the word Hindu arises, later, let us say, when Huan Song comes, again you have the same geographical and the spiritual connotation. Hence, I think this particular thing is valid, number one. Number two, we should understand that this is the only civilization that harbors in its heart a natural religion. No other civilization still has a natural religion to it. Okay? The natural religions have been destroyed, and in their place, the religion of sky gods have come. Monopolistic religions have come. So this is the only nation, only civilization that has this. And naturally, when it is a natural civilization, it will have a lot of diversity. And it will allow these diversities to flourish. When it allows these diversities to flourish, it will look like all these do not have any interconnections. But when these interconnections will surface, when there is an attack by a hostile force, when a hostile force comes in, it cannot be contained within, or it cannot be absorbed into the organism. The organism will develop a sense of a self by creating antigens. So whenever there has been a resistance against monopolistic aggression, the term Hindu has come again. For example, Hindu Raya, when the Vijayanagar Empire came. And then Hindavi Swaraj, when Veer Shivaji came. So the term Hindu is also the defining of the self of this nation, because it is also the symbol of Hindu resistance to this, or the resistance of theodiversity to the monopolistic aggression. So I think it is a credible term.
I'll come to this theodiversity part later. Talking about that resistance thing that you just described, there is this beautiful chapter on Bharat Mata in your book. It's the second chapter, just after the origins chapter. In fact, we have been remembering Subramanya Bharati from the morning today. So when I read that chapter, these, some lines of, you have also mentioned him in the book, actually. These lines just came to my memory. Nallaram Nadiya Mannarai Valti, Nalam Purival Engal Thai. Avar Allavarayin, Avarai Viringi, Pin Ananda Kuttidval, she says. Our mother, Bharat Mata, if a king is dharmic and virtuous, she will bless that king and she will make him grow. But if he is an adharmic king, Allavarayan, then she becomes Kali and she devours such kings and then dances in joy. So such is the nature of our mother, Bharat Mata, he says. In fact, your entire chapter is kind of a commentary on these lines of Bharati. So you start from the Vedic goddess Nirriti, and then you come to Silappadigaram, and then you talk about Lalita Sahasranama, and then you bring in some Hindu heroes like Shivaji and Kumara Kampana, all the way to the freedom struggle. Such a beautiful, it is a spiritual idea as well as a historical continuity, both simultaneously. So can you explain how did you get this conception of Bharat Mata in this manner, and give a detail of some of the things that I just mentioned?
So, as you rightly said, it is from Nirati. Then, I will give a, already I have talked about it, but I will again talk about it here in this. As we all know, in Tamil there are 5 Thinais, Ainthinai. In Ainthinai, you have 5 different gods. These Ainthinai are the biocultural or eco-cultural zones. They were used as literary techniques, and they also have a reality in your geographical realm. So you have for Kurinji Murugan, understandable, that you have the forest, you have the rich mountains, and for that there is Murugan, Skanda. And for the grazing lands, Mullai you have Krishna, Mayon. And for Neithal you have Varunan, and for Marutam you have Indra, because Indra controls the clouds. And for Neithal it is Varunan, understandable, because it is related to the ocean. But if you go through Western anthropological literature, you will find that the goddess is always associated with fertility cults and fertility traditions. Here, you have Kottavai, the goddess, associated with Palai. So what exactly is Palai? Chilappadigaram tells that very clearly. Palai is something that comes out because you do not properly manage Kurinji and Mullai. What are Kurinji and Mullai? They are the commons. Kurinji and Mullai are not owned by anyone. These are the commons. When the commons, the land that doesn't belong to anybody, but it also has human association, when that is not properly maintained, either it is because of ecological mismanagement, or it is because of, at that time they considered it as a mismanagement by the king. The king has failed in his duties. You have to understand this very, very clearly here. So when Mullai and Kurinji, they become mismanaged and they become degenerate, then they become Palai. In other words, there is a disruption of the ecological harmony. And Nirati is the Vedic goddess who manifests herself when the Rita is actually disturbed. So you have this connection actually. If you want to understand why the goddess has been made, the goddess of Palai, the deity of the Palai, then you have to understand this Vedic concept. That is number 1. So when a king, this has a larger connotations also. So when there is robbery in a particular place, in a particular kingdom, that means the king hasn't done his work properly. It is an indicator, it is a social indicator that the kingdom is not ruled properly. Compare it with the Western anthropology. Western anthropology of late 19th and early 20th century very clearly thought that if a person is a thief, a criminal, then that person is a criminal because of his racial character or because of certain components in his brain. They had a pseudoscience called phrenology. They used to decapitate the heads of people and they used to send it to England, and then they used to study the brains, and they used to say that Hindus are thieves because they do not have these grooves for moral development in them. So this kind of pseudoscience arose. Now compare this with how the Hindu social science looked at this. Hindu social science said that a person is becoming a thief because there is some problem with the entire nation's management. So this is more proper. It is a holistic scientific view in compared to the theory that the Europe developed. That is a bit of a diversion. Now, this goddess arises whenever there is disharmony, whenever harmony is disturbed, whenever there is aggression. In Indian history also, whenever this harmony of theodiversity is being disturbed by external aggressions, the goddess has surfaced. So you have the Kampana Nayaka, where Ganga Devi in her epic shows how the goddess Meenakshi herself comes and hands over the weapon to fight against the forces of aggression. That is not a single thing. That is not a single phenomenon. Again, you have, in the case of Guru Govinda Singh, his dagger was called Bhagavati. His dagger was called Bhagavati. It represented the divine feminine. And in the case of Shivaji, it was called Bhavani. And, okay, these all belong to the central, you can say, the central Indian land. You have this Gaidillu, who was the Rani of Nagaland. She has a vision of a goddess riding on a tiger in Nagaland. She has this vision of the goddess riding on a tiger in a cave. She gives her a weapon and tells her to fight against the British. And before 1857, some tribals protested against the British. The tribal king was caught and he was tied to the mouth of the cannon. And he burst into a song about Kali and Chamundi. So this goddess again and again surfaces in this land, okay, whenever there is aggression. Why I had to research this is because the Irfan Habib had made a very interesting remark. He said that the Bharat Mata was a colonial import. That influenced by Britannia, we invented Bharat Mata. And then there was one, that Iyer, Manishankar Iyer's brother, forgot his name, that Iyer who write Ironomics or something. Swaminathan Iyer. And he said, I will tell Bharat Mata ki jai the same way I am saying Sunny Leone ki jai. So they made this kind of ugly, perverted remarks about Bharat Mata. So I wanted to know what actually is Bharat Mata. Is it a colonial invention? Now, very interestingly, there is this Nivedita Lewis, who actually was a Christian and who wrote a lot of things, remember, about Christianity and all that. She made a very interesting discovery. Okay, it is about, in Mylapore temple, if you go to the Navaratri hall, you will find in one of the pillars a sculpture of Bharat Mata. Parvati shown us the sculpture of, modeled after Bharat Mata from Nagpur Press in 1930s. So this Bharat Mata is not an import. It is part and parcel of this nation's consciousness that arises again and again. It is the divine feminine that arises and that represents the spirit of India.
Wonderful. In fact, the way you described it so evocatively, that whole chapter, it's like a poetry and meditation. I don't know how many of you have read this book. The chapter on Bharat Mata, it appears to be something like as if Ma Saraswati herself has inspired you to write that chapter about her glories. So beautiful, Aravindan. From there, you have this chapter called Racism, Casteism, Social Emancipation and Hindutva, where you describe that Hindutva is not a regressive sort of ideology. I mean, even when you consider it as an ideology. So you give a lot of counter examples to disprove that. So this very concept of social emancipation, some traditional people with very traditional views in India, they think that the very idea of social emancipation itself is Western. So it's not right to say that we have Hindutva organizations spearheading social emancipation or women's empowerment. How do you respond to that? But in your book, you have actually cited a lot of evidence and anecdotes and incidents on how organizations like RSS have actually worked on the social emancipation.
Okay. Let me tell one very interesting thing, that we always think that some superficial concepts of conservatism is associated with our actual traditional religion. So today when I came here, Jadayu asked me, what are those three pictures there? And he pointed out that one of that is Bodhentra, and they are the persons who commenced the bhajan tradition, the Trimurtis of bhajan tradition. Now, there is a very beautiful traditional story associated with Bodhentra, right? Now, if you ask an ordinary person on the road, let us take a very delicate subject here. A woman has been defiled in her body. She has been abducted. She was a wife of someone. She was abducted by a person belonging to another religion, taken away. And then she had been subjected to all kinds of cruelties, and then she has a chance to come back to her husband. Should her husband accept her or not? So we would say that a radical revolutionary person would say the husband should accept. Otherwise, the woman should lead an ordinary ascetic life, should not become a wife of the husband again. That would be the traditional answer. But Bodhentra, there is a very beautiful story where a Brahmin wife was abducted by a Muslim soldier, and then the Brahmin, he becomes very upset. The husband becomes very upset, and he goes on a Tirtha Yatra. As he was going to Tirtha Yatra around Odisha or someplace, Odisha, and there he meets his wife, and the wife comes back, and now he is in a dilemma whether to accept or not. And then the story, as you know, the story goes that the guru says they go and they want to go and see a particular guru who is well versed in Dharma Shastras. And then the guru had passed away, his son was there, and that son says that you tell Rama 3 times, go into a water body, just immerse yourself, tell 3 times Rama and come back, everything will be okay. And then the widow of that guru, who was sitting there, gets angry at this man, telling that, what kind of solution you are giving, what kind of a person are you? You are totally anti-dharmic. And then he asks why. She tells, telling the name of Rama 1 time is enough. Why she has to tell 3 times Rama? Okay, so think about it. The kind of the so-called radicalism is already embedded in our very orthodox traditions. So if you know the tradition well, if you are immersed in your tradition in a very authentic way, then the social reforms, the point I want to stress in this book is that in any society, there will be social stagnation and there will be social emancipation. Forces of social stagnation and social emancipation. In the Western societies, the social emancipation is created by its economic factors, by its political factors. In India alone, the social emancipation happens as a product of this spiritual progress. And that is the process of Hindutva. So Hindutva naturally creates social emancipation. It does not carry a banner. It does not come out with the slogans. It naturally creates this. It is like the fragrance of a flower. Naturally it happens. And I have given a lot of examples. Unfortunately, what has happened is, during the civilizational colonization, the colonizers had to justify themselves. So they told that colonizing is actually a civilizational mission. Because you people are kind of backward, you people are patriarchal, you people suppress each other in the name of jati. And so we are here to liberate you. So becoming pro-Western is liberation. Now, Hindutva shows that you don't need this Westernization. Without Westernization, you can liberate yourself through your own spirituality. So that is what I have shown in that.
Okay. Caste.
Remember the Mandal Commission times, okay? And also there were a lot of burning because of this Gujarat. Remember there were riots in Gujarat because of reservation. So in Ramesh Patanke's book, RSS and Manuvat, okay, RSS Manuvatamam, that is how it has been translated in Tamil. So that is a must reading for every Hindutvaite. That there is a conversation between the third Satsangachala, Balasaheb Devarasji, and the Karyakartas from Gujarat who were agitated about these reservations to people. And Devarasji explains a lot of things. He particularly one thing struck me very nicely. And at that time, we have all gone through this Mandal Commission problem and all that. People were self-immolating themselves for Mandal Commission. We don't know which side of this you should be and all that. And the papers where the media was talking about Kamantal versus Mandal. Yes. At that time, Devarasji said very interesting thing. Okay, he pointed out that because of this, a lot of communities will start owning up India, the state missionaries of India, the state networks, the civil networks of India will be owned up by a lot of communities. And that will actually strengthen the Hindu society. That was a very interesting logic. Because if you look at from a very myopic point of view, then you would say that Ramajanma Bhoomi, we should all align, and Mandal Commission versus Ramajanma Bhoomi. But Devarasji was able to see beyond that, and he said that this Mandal Commission is going to benefit Hindu society in the long run. At that time, we couldn't understand what did he mean. But now, with Narendra Modi, we can see that the social base has expanded like anything. And one of the main reasons why the social base has expanded for Hindutva is Mandal Commission. So we should be able to see beyond, and we should be able to see from a pan-Hindu point of view. And that pan-Hindu point of view will have representations of the FC, BC, OBC, MBC, SC, ST, all the Hindu societies. If you remember, in Panchayats, you will have representations of all the communities in a particular village. We have to see reservation as a kind of representation. That is number one. Number two, in the traditional Hindu society, all the jadis existed because of their interconnectivity. We have forgotten the interconnectivity. We are only talking about the jadis. Today, if Brahmins are talking about only Brahmins, Brahmins don't have any meaning if there are no other varnas. If there are no other varnas, what is the meaning of a person being a Brahmin? What is the meaning of a person being a particular jadi if there are no other jadis around him? So we have to understand this particular aspect very, very clearly. It should be told again and again to us that what we have to study are the interrelations between the jadis. And the boundaries of the jadis are not concrete. Always there is cultural and genetic osmosis happening between these boundaries. How do you manage these interrelations? That is where the civilizational genius of Hindu was there. And that has been removed, and every jati has been atomized today. And the churning that we are seeing today is because of that. And this churning is also, in a way, irreversible. It is going to happen. And in that, what we have to do as Hindutvites is to maximize the interjati harmony, maximize social justice. So towards that, what decision should be taken, that has to be taken. And I think of all the political parties, BJP is placed in a very good way to think of these problems from the point of view of the greater good of the Hindu society and act. That is how I see it.
So, you spoke about the positive aspects of reservation, but there is also a very negative aspect. Of course, one being there are victims of reservation. That's one part. The other part is that the castes are getting more and more hardened. So now that it is all official, in fact, just on the eve of Karnataka elections, BJP has announced the internal reservation within the scheduled community reservations also. So even that level of flexibility, which is there in the very idea of jati, is getting completely obliterated. And this is kind of becoming something like a genetic marker, because once it goes into the jati certificate, that's it. It's like etched for generations, for a family and for an individual. Do you think it's good in the long-term view for the Hindu society?
Here I will take a lesson from Dr. Ambedkar. when he talks about social minorities. Okay, the jatis that do not have enough power in a particular political discourse, they are the social minorities. And he says that if you are just you think that social minorities can be ignored, then you are a big fool, because they will rip apart the entire fabric of the society one point of time or other. That is happening now. Okay, but the purpose of reservation, he says, is to make sure that these social minorities get merged with the majority. Is it possible? That is the question we have to ask. Let us take a very concrete example from Tamil Nadu, that is that of Devendra Kula Velala. So you have a community that was in the scheduled community list. Today they are telling that we are no more scheduled community. So why that is happening? That is happening because the reservations have empowered them enough. Now they are telling that we have empowered enough. Now we can look back into our history and remember, in India, no jati has been untouchables, or they have been so-called Dalits, etc. for 3,000 years. That is the absolute nonsensical myth. So a particular community had moved into that space of untouchability because of certain political reasons. Right. And every community, including the so-called untouchable communities, they have an illustrious historical past. When they can look up towards that is when they are empowered enough, economically, politically. Once they are empowered enough, then they will look back to the illustrious past and they will come back to the Hindu society. That has happened in the case of Devendra Kula Velala. Okay. And then what is happening? There are other people who think that, okay, this title Vellara should not be given to them. Okay? Why that is happening? Because I consider here a particular aspect, because of the colonization, people have got this idea of social creationism, that Vellaras are created then with the certain communities, those communities exist even today as Vellaras. Brahmins are created with certain communities, those communities exist today with Vellala. If you belong to Vishwamitra Kotra, that means you actually are from Vishwamitra himself. Okay, so those kind of ideas have got crystallized because of colonialism. It was not so. There has been social evolution, there has been no social creationism. And hence, who are today Vellalas may not be Vellalas some 5 generations before. And I know that I am going to be roasted for telling this actually. Okay, but let me tell this very clearly. So, you were not born with this title. If you are going to give this title to another community, and that community, remember, this was the community that converted to Islam in Meenakshipura. The same community is today telling that we are proud Hindus. And then the rest of the Hindu community should open their hands and they should accept them. Right? This is what evolution is supposed to do. The reservation is supposed to do. Okay? That emotional bonding. Now the point is, I will come back to it. The point is, the political parties that create, that implement reservation for their political goodness, then there are political parties that implement reservation for the goodness of the society. BJP belongs to the second part. Okay? I always tell this example. Ravana also lifted the mountain. Hanuman also lifted the mountain. So Ravana lifted the mountain because of his egoism for negativity. Hanuman lifted the mountain because he wants to bring healing. So the act is the same, lifting the mountain. But the intentions are different. That is what we have to remember here.
And continuing that, Sri Krishna also lifted the mountain temporarily to save people from the rain. Very, very interesting analogy, Aravindan. That's good. So I think we have spent enough time on the caste-related narrative in the book. There is a wonderful chapter, Science and Hindutva, which really bears your signature, right? So the moment you see a title, Science and Hindutva, normally everyone expects that, oh, he is going to say Hindutva is anti-science. This is what is the general narrative in this country. But you have shown beautifully how Hindutva, the Hindutva as an ideology has nurtured the scientific temperament, etc. You make a very interesting point that Hindus have a natural tendency to accept evolution. I mean, there have never been any big resistance in the Hindu society, like among Christians, in resisting the evolution and asking for banning the teaching of evolutions in school, etc. So why do you think, I mean, what makes Hindus to accept evolution with open heart? Though, if you really see superfluously, evolution is very much against some of the traditional beliefs in Hindu Puranas and the Hindu texts also.
See, Hindu Puranas, you talk about Hindu Puranas, then you have actually a lot of varied things in this. I will give you one very interesting Hindu Purana that we all know, but by the time, how much time we have, that is, okay. Right, so you are aware of it, right? Okay. We all know about the story of Murugan punishing Brahma, right? So what is it about? So Brahma was he became an egoistic god, telling that I am the creator. And then Murugan calls him and he tells him to tell the Vedas. It is through Vedas that he creates. Vedas is nothing but the basic primordial vibrations. It is from this primordial vibration that creation comes. It is not because of that creator God. Creator God is only a pedagogic tool for people to understand certain basic aspects. And so when he says that, then he says Om, he starts, and then he tells what is the meaning of Om and all that, right? Now, what is Om? Essentially, it is the sound symbol of Atman, consciousness. So it is from the consciousness that the entire creation comes. We accept that. Almost all Hindu schools accept that. Okay, and you have the Sankhya philosophy, which is essentially an evolutionary philosophy. So because of all this, it's very easy for a Hindu to accept evolution. And there is this mistaken notion that the Dasavadara represents evolution. Evolution it branches out. It is a phylogenetic tree. And Dasavadara, if you look, it will be a kind of a linear thing. So even though it is not so, at least in the Hindu mind, the acceptance of evolution is there naturally. Because we don't give an emphasis to the creator God. And it is very much embedded in Hindu culture because of a lot of Puranic stories. The creator God doesn't have much importance. Right? The only person in the entire Hindu Puranas who said that I am your father, you should worship only me, is Hiranyakasipu. Okay. So here we are able to do away with the creator God, and because of that we are able to accept evolution very easily, and that is a unique cultural aspect of Hindu Dharma.
Yeah. So I would love to talk more on the science subject, but for want of time, I will move on to some other important topics in the book. But again, for the viewers, the Science and Hindutva chapter is wonderfully written. Just to give an example, there is this TKDL, Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, which was created during the previous Vajpayee rule, and the tremendous impact it has created. And only because of that, India has won all the legal fights while patenting turmeric, patenting many other Ayurvedic formulations. India was able to win that only because someone like Murali Manohar Joshi had a vision to create this great digital platform. So there are many such things which Aravindan outlines in that chapter. So I want those interested to read those who are interested in these to read the book to explore more. The last chapter of your book is on Samanvaya. So this is a very controversial topic. So you say that we all know about Dara Shikoh, right? The one who, the brother of Aurangzeb, who was attracted to Hindu Dharma. He translated Upanishads and other Hindu texts into Persian. You write that Dara Shikoh represents an important civilizational peak for India. In him, there is a model for approaching theodiversity. And then on the same line, you talk about the Muslim Sufi saints of Tamil Nadu, like Gunangudi Mastan, etc. This all sounds very nice. But given the present condition, where we are seeing the Muslim society getting more and more radicalized and more fundamentalist, do you really see a relevance for these stories? This all looks, to me, it looks like a very sweet old story, but not really having much of a present relevance.
So that particular chapter on theodiversity also has the activities of PFI, how they planned the Coimbatore bomb blast, and the entire Islamic fundamentalist movement, how it is operating in India, and what are the kind of threats they are posing, how they are how they are networking with the so-called secular, actually the pseudo-secular forces, and they are creating a problem. And how the Islamic fundamentalism is actually in its core very similar to Marxist fundamentalism. So all this has been dealt with that. Okay. In fact, it also talks about the three important transnational institutions that are operating on the larger Indian landmass, namely Jamaat-e-Islami, Tawheed Jamaat, and Tabligh Jamaat. Okay, these are the three transnational bodies, Islamist bodies, that are operating on the larger Indian landmass. And so we have to be very careful when we wish for Akhanda Bharat, unless otherwise we dilute the monopolistic tendencies of Islamist politics. That's it. Why these aspects are given is because want to show one important thing, that it starts with the Hindu resistance to Islamist invaders. It is because of the consistent Hindu resistance to Islamic invaders that they had to accept Hindus. Otherwise, according to strict theology, all Hindus should be killed. They should be given only two options: either get converted or get killed. That didn't happen, not because of the magnanimity of the Islamist rulers, but because of the continued Hindu resistance. So the Hindu resistance is a must if Samanvaya is to happen. That is number one. Number two, this model is there. It is not for Hindus. It is for the Muslims. I have written that particular chapter. If Islam is to live, it has to Hinduize itself. That should be very clear for them. So what happened with respect to Dara Shikoh? Interestingly, I was just reading the other day about, there is a chapter on Akbar also. Yes. Right? So, see.
You are actually very sympathetic to Akbar, like some of the other Hindu historians.
Actually, I have the sources that I have used are from Voice of India. So you can be very clear that the sources that I have used are not pseudo-secular sources. Let us be very clear about this. It is about the entire historiography of India, okay? We all know about one famous conversion. When you study Indian history, the first thing they tell is, I was in second standard, I remember this. The teacher told about Ashoka, and how Ashoka saw this Kalinga war, and then she told how he became a Buddhist from being a Hindu. So at that particular age, you are told very clearly that Hinduism is a religion of violence, and Buddhism is this religion of peace and harmony. And so the very good duty of a Hindu is to get converted. That is the moral of the story of Ashoka that is given to you. But the historical evidence for that is very scanty. Okay. Interestingly, there is another one conversion that people don't talk about. It is that of Akbar. So Akbar sacks and massacres, I think it is Chittu, completely. And he was a jihadi, yes, strong, violent jihadist. Later, in Akbar Nama, you find a very interesting passage. He says that during the time of my ignorant dark days, I compelled people to get converted to Islam. This is a very interesting statement, because in Islam, if you know the Islamic theology, the term the dark age actually refers to pre-Islamic period. Akbar inverts it in his biography that he commissioned, and tells that his Islamic period was the dark time. So here you see actually a change. And also how he kills Hemu. So Bairam Khan, he tells Akbar to kill Hemu in a very ruthless way. Later in his Akbar Nama, all those things are kind of polished, airbrushed. And the reason that Voice of India book, that scholar who was a Mukherjee, I think, he says is because of his influence of Hindu scriptures. Then in 1609, the year Akbar died, he issues the coins of Sita and Rama with Devanagari inscription. So here you have a very solid evidence of a person who starts as a jihadist, is becoming slowly Hinduized. but time was not in his favor. 1609 he dies. And then what happens is, this is very interesting, his son is taken, because his son was having very bad relations with the father. He was taken by the fundamentalist Islamic guru, Maulvis, and they are told that we will support you provided you reverse his policies. And then the continuity goes to Tarashiko, where Tarashiko says, he inverses completely, he rejects Islamic theology. He says that Quran is not the complete book, Quran is not a standalone book, Upanishads are the standalone book, so he gets converted to Hinduism. So that is the civilizational peak. A Mughal prince, despite the threat and despite the fact that he becomes a Balidani, he gets converted to Hinduism. But he is shown as a kind of secular icon.
No,
So
you say that he actually didn't convert, and that is where the model is, right? He didn't officially convert to Hinduism.
it's a very interesting thing. Yeah. The point is,
But mentally,
the charge against
mentally
him,
converted.
the charge that Aurangzeb put against him was apostasy.
Right.
That he gets renounced Islam.
Okay.
That part he has done. He had renounced Islam. He has embraced theodiversity. And when this particular charge has been put, he does not reject it.
Right.
Okay. Now, let me add a fun fact. The whole thing is, this whole aspect has been written as a drama by Indra Parthasarathi.
Right.
In
Aurangzeb.
which he actually shows these aspects very clearly, the Hinduizing aspect very clearly. Today he is a hardcore leftist because of whatever reason. So that is just a fun fact.
For want of time, I want to ask this. I want to briefly touch upon Christianity also. You mentioned three approaches. The soft approach, where the Christian conversion missionary appropriates Hindu symbols, and then the hard approach. It's like hard conversion mafias and Christian terrorism, like what we see in Northeast, and then a proxy war. So given, we are talking this from Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, you know that all these three tactics are applied in Tamil Nadu in the political and social sphere. So how do you think the process of Samanvaya can actually work with Christianity, especially with Christianity in the Tamil Nadu context?
In a single word, if I am to answer this, it is Hindu Sangathan, Hindu unity. If Hindus are united very strongly, then we can stop all these processes. And again, I will tell you, it is not only for the good of Hindus, it is also for the good of Christians. And you told about TKDL stopping biopiracy. It is time the Hindu Adhinams should come together, the Hindu Jiyas, the Dharmacharyas, the Jagat Gurus, and all those people, they should come together. And they should stop theopiracy. Biopiracy, we understand. What is theopiracy? You can just go to St. Thomas, Cathedral, whatever. Mount. No, not Mount. Here they have that Basilica.
Santum,
Or whatever.
Santum Basilica.
Yeah, Santum. You can go there and you can see they have this big flag, this thing, Dvajastamba. So this is theopiracy. So this theopiracy should be stopped. Who should stop it? Who should give word for that? Our Adhinams should stop going and eating cake in Christmas functions, and they should actually start asking, put an end to these things, this kind of dramas. If Hindus are united, then we can have a healthy dialogue. If Hindus are weak, then every dialogue will be a poaching attempt. So ultimately it is about Hindu unity. If Hindus are united, then there will be a healthy dialogue between Christianity and Hinduism. If Hindus are not united, our things will be appropriate.
Okay. Before opening the floor for questions, a last question. So what is your personal motivation and inspiration to write such a colossal book on Hindutva, undertaking such painstaking research over the years?
The reason is because I went to RSS Shaga when I was 14. And that was also the year when I lost my faith in God. I became, within quotes, I can say atheist. What I found in the RSS Shaga is that me being an atheist never bothered any of the Swayamsevaks. And what was more, that was also the year when I went to attend a lecture by Balasaheb Devras. He had come to Nagarkoil, and till then I was under the impression that RSS is kind of, Christians have their fundamentalist church and the Hindus have RSS. A typical Hindu mindset. So my father told, okay, go and listen, and I went with him. And Balasaheb ji, it was, I think, February of 1984. Or yeah. And Balasaheb ji started telling that this is a age of science when we actually question the existence of God. That is how he started. I was floored. Okay. So my experience of RSS is there. How RSS actually functions, and the way RSS is portrayed is there in the media. There is a difference, complete 180-degree difference. RSS is not fundamentalist. RSS can accommodate atheists. RSS has never questioned my personal beliefs. RSS is a place where I can be myself. And yet these people tell that this RSS is a fascist organization, RSS is a fundamentalist organization, so I wanted to know what is the truth. I started studying the academic literature, I started studying the media portrayal of RSS. And then I found that there is a big gap. A lot of data are purposefully left out when you are talking about RSS. Purposefully left out. Okay, every book, Western book on RSS would talk about, for example, Guruji Golwalkar's 1939 book, We Are Our Nation, would define some 2 or 3 lines about Germany being strong and all that kind of things. But they would never talk about Guruji, the same Guruji Golwalkar telling that when you are doing service to people, you never discriminate on the basis of religion. If you are doing a service to a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu or the so-called upper caste, so-called lower caste, don't worry about that. You do the service the same way you do puja to the God in the Garbhagriha, okay, in the sanctum sanctorum, the way you do. Though that is the kind of attitude, not to convert a person to your ideology. You can actually serve your opponent, thinking that this is a good opportunity to show my ideological superiority, I can convert him. But Guruji says, don't do that like that. You do it like a service, like a puja to the God you should serve, whether he's a Christian or a Muslim or a Jain or whatever. Okay. So these things, very clearly there are left out things. I started searching for these left out things that are not portrayed, and I wanted to write a book on Hindutva, what it actually is. And that is the reason.
Can we take questions? Do we have time?
Any questions from member of the audience? So you can get the mic.
You were speaking about Hinduism in its natural course, being a leveling sort of movement. Adi Shankara's time, he wrote Manisha Panchagam. In that time, somebody pointed out that here comes a Chandala. So, in that time itself, Shankaracharya spoke against someone being treated as a Chandala. But then how come the same thing happened over a period of time? That caste sort of discrimination happened over a period of time. That's one question. And I come from Kerala, sir. I came here just to know how this Litfest is being organized, conducted. Yes. There's a place called Kottiyur near Wayanad, where there is a Vaishakha festival of 28 days happening, and there are 64 castes that are being given their own appropriate places. There are different castes, and all those representing those castes are given very primal importance in the conduct of the whole festival. I don't know whether you know about it, or rather it is to be highlighted among our thinking sort of discussions. That is one thing. And also one more point I wanted. There is a big group of ex-Muslims. They are forming, They openly say that I am an ex-Muslim. I don't no more believe in Muslim faith. How can we encourage such people? Okay.
Yeah, questioners, please keep your questions very short for want of time.
So, first the question of this, Manisha Panchakamadi Sankara, and still why this is there. Why? You take the Vedic society. The Vedic society itself, you will find that there was a kind of a discrimination against certain sections of the society. Okay. So, you have to differentiate between the Vedic society and the values. The society will follow its own dynamics. In all the societies, there will be social hierarchies. And whenever there is a social hierarchy, there will be social exclusion. That is the dynamics of the society. But what are the values of Sanatana Dharma? The values of Sanatana Dharma are against social exclusion. That is what you find in Manisha Panchakam. In fact, you will find social exclusion in all the societies. In Burma, there is untouchability. In Japan, there is untouchability. Okay? There was untouchability. In Europe, it was not well known, but in France and all, there have been untouchables, cohorts. If you just go and Google cohorts, the last untouchables of Europe, you will find. Okay? Everywhere there was social exclusion, but only in India, the spiritual voice talked against social exclusion. If you take actually Bible, the so-called New Testament, you will find that Jesus was telling his disciples, when you go out, I think it is Matthew chapter 10 verse 12, I think, I'm not sure. When you go out, do not go into the streets and towns of the Samaritans. Go only to the Jews. Do not go into the streets and towns of Samaritans. That was actually what? A kind of practicing untouchability. And Jesus had to be born only in the line of David. And for that, in Luke, there are different type of generation, 14 generations. Matthew, different 14 generations. That means only a particular bloodline has the superiority for the Messiah to be born. So those kind of birth-based concepts were there in all the religions. Only in Hindu Dharma, this particular social exclusion has been opposed in the name of spirituality. Whether it is Adi Sankara, Sri Ramanuja, the Bhakti saints, they all have opposed. And that is the inheritance that we have got. Okay.
So in summary, you are saying there were Chandalas in every society, but there is Manisha Panchakam only in Hindu Dharma.
Exactly.
Beautiful quote. I think this can be made into a quote.
Yes, exactly. Very beautiful.
So we have one more question. There's a gentleman here.
How to encourage
Oh, okay. When it comes to encouraging ex-Muslims, let them be
Please
there. Let us not disturb them. Okay, let us not disturb the ex-Muslims because it is a very dangerous situation they are in. But at the same time, if we create an India where it is proud to be a Hindu, the ex-Muslims will naturally gravitate towards Hindu Dharma. Okay.
எல்லோருக்கும் வணக்கம். நிகழ்ச்சி நல்லா அருமையாக இருக்குது. ராமானுஜர் சங்கராச்சாரியம் பற்றி பேசுகிறீங்க. எல்லாருக்கும் ஆங்கிலம் தெரியாது. தமிழ்லையும் கொஞ்சம் சொன்னீங்கன்னா நல்லா.
ஐயா கட்டாயமாக தமிழில் சொல்லிப்போம். அந்த இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியை ஆங்கிலத்தில் நடத்துவதாக முடிவு பண்ணதுனால ஆங்கிலத்தில் அவ்வளோதான். இல்லை தமிழ் நிச்சயமாக பேசியிருக்கோம்.
நாளைக்கு நாங்கள் 2 பேரும் தமிழில் பேச போகிறோம். நாளை மதியம் ஒரு அமர்வு இருக்கின்றது, திராவிடம் உண்மைகளும் பொய்களும். அதில் நாங்களே தமிழில் பேசுவோம். ஆமாம், நாளை மதியம் தெரியல, மதியம் செஷன் ஆரம்பிக்கும் போது.
So please keep your questions short.
Yeah. We have a unique culture, and then it has a relevant forever. The thing is, there must be systematic study of our civilization. What I feel is, we haven't done so far. Because civilization has grown for over a period of time, over a time period. During a prehistoric time, historical time, and post-historical time. It is growing, it is not static. It keeps on growing. We have to study various development of culture and science, language, religion, political system over a period of this, especially the 3 period of time.
Yes, sir. What is
And
the question?
then we have to create a proper text, with the help of anthropologists, archaeologists, and linguistics and all. They are contributing. They are doing a lot of studies and they publish books and all. But we have to make a textbook, proper textbook to study the civilization which has grown, developed on this Indian soil. That is my suggestion. I want to know whether your book has contributed, because naming of the civilization is not a problem.
Yeah, this is one such book.
It is a name.
Yeah, but-
Hindutva is name of our
No, but
culture, the civilization. You are naming the
much more books
civilization
like this should
Hindutva,
come.
but that is not a problem. Now that is not a problem. First, whether we have documented the historical development of the civilization of India, properly documented, and then you can name, you can give any name. There is
Thank
no
you, sir.
objection.
They will
But
answer the question.
when we haven't documented properly all the details
Sir,
of
please
this
keep-
on this soil,
I understand.
how could we say that
Can I answer the
this is the civilization?
Can I answer the
The work, we have taken the work, but it has to continue and then complete the work and then give a name to that your book. That is my suggestion.
Thank you for your suggestion, sir.
Yeah, we'll take the next question. also.
Yeah, we
Given
are
a
taking the
suggestion.
next question. Yeah.
Arvind, I mean, Swarajya, I've written a lot of articles. I just want to ask, there is one article which you have written quite some time ago about the silent 80 to 90% Muslims in India. Okay, I'm talking about who typically probably there is a fear of the Imam, the Maulvi, or the larger Islamic thought kind of a thing. I'm saying if this silent majority is just going to be silent and allow 10 or 20% of the Muslims to exercise their radicalism kind of a thing, as a religion or through the political ecosystem, how do you think, leave aside the government, how the Hindu society can address it? Thank you.
For this, the answer was given by, already has been given by a very scholarly pro-Hindu Belgian Indologist, Coin-Rodalist. He said that this majority, silent majority of Indian Muslims we are talking about, unconsciously, they are like Sita in Asogavana. So we have to be like Hanuman. We have to stop them from getting into the path, a suicidal path. And we have to approach them with love. Okay, unfortunately what is happening right now in the social, in the internet, in the digital networks is that we want to get a brownie point over them. We want to hurt them. We want to show that your religion is very bad. All that is at another level. Let us not worry about that. The point I want to say is that we have to get to them and we have to make sure that they realize that Dr. Murali Manohar Joshi once said, during the height of Ram Janmabhoomi movement, he said this, not only Murali Manohar Joshi, but also Dr. Syed Sagabuddin, both are children of Rama. We have to make them understand that. And that can be done through a lot of outreach programs, starting from inviting them to Navaratri. Okay, here Jatayu is here, and he has a very wonderful way. Okay, for example, if you are inviting your Muslim friend for Navaratri, your friend may not eat the prasad, but what you can do is you can give him a book, and he will get that book, and then slowly over the generations they will come. That is at our level. Then the same thing can be done at different levels, like this particular government has been trying to do that. That is one. Another, to empower these silent Islamic Muslims, what we need to do is that we have to take evolution to them. Once evolution goes and removes the concept of the creator God and makes them understand that divinity is omnipotent and omnipresent. When divinity is omnipresent, when they understand that, the monopolistic theology gets diluted and slowly they will be coming to Dharma. This is a very strategic, very civilizational process. We cannot discuss it like this openly, but nevertheless, these are the pointers to what you are asking.
Thank you so much.